Greetings everyone and welcome back to the Casual Wargamer. Apologies for the lack of videos over the last week. Real life's been a little bit busy, meaning I haven't had time to do anything. But I'm back with this little bit. Yesterday, the day of the coronation, we had our monthly 40k tournament at my local game store. And following one game, I was talking to my opponent and he made comment that on the store's Discord, I didn't seem all that enthused by 10th edition. So I thought I would sort of touch on that. I am enthused by 10th edition. Let's just start. But, let's just say that in this last week, there have been a number of faction previews. And I was going to do videos for each of these. But I've decided that other people and other channels have done that much better than I have and on time. So I'm just going to sort of touch on the generalness of 10th. I've played every edition of 40k bar second. I started with Rogue Trader back in 87. I still even have my little pamphlet thingy from Games Day when I went down there to pick up my copy of Rogue Trader. I didn't get to play a lot of it. My friend Chris and I at school basically played probably a dozen times at best. And I was more into D&D going into the 90s than I was Warhammer, and I didn't really have anyone to play with, so I skipped second. And I know there are fans of second out there, but quite frankly, I had the rule book at one point, or rules books, I should say, and read it and watched some battle reports, and quite frankly, I'm glad I missed it. To me, it was an awful system. Came back in the end of third with a system that was nice and simple, much more streamlined than what we had with Rogue Trader. Fourth edition was where it really took off locally with our club, and fourth edition sort of blossomed, but it had problems. It was very much a system where certain armies were far better than others. You had the original Forge World stuff, which was overpowered and undercosted to the point that a lot of players refused to play against other people that had brought Forge World units. Fifth edition fixed that, was a lot better system. Sixth was a bit of an odd one. It seemed to progress, but also wasn't even out that long, couple of years, I think tops. I don't think we even got that. I think it got about 18 months. Then we got seventh, and seventh was a massive mosh of everything. And it was overly complicated. And although, I had some fun playing it, it wasn't a great system. Along comes eighth and then ninth. And to me, ninth has been the best system we've ever had thus far. They all have their problems. Ninth especially, too many stratagems, ridiculous power creep. Some of it from the likes of like the Leagues of Votan launch and so on. But I like 9th edition. The 8th, 9th edition flows very, very well. The mechanics work very, very well. With the promotional previews that Games Workshop did for 8th and 9th, it led to some very, very knee-jerk reaction moments, especially 8th into 9th, myself included. And it got people talking. It got people talking about the game and where it was going. And I think they're doing exactly the same thing with 10th. I mean, it makes sense. It's a good way to do it. They're putting out these nice previews, and we've got stuff on weapons, we've got stuff on the missions, we've started getting these faction focuses and so on. But they're not giving us everything. Again, quite obviously. And so I'm kind of on the fence because there's stuff I see that I like and there's stuff I see that I don't like. And then there's other things where I'm just like, how are they going to handle this? For example, I'm a Space Marine player. And what I'm seeing is nice on these previews for Space Marines. I get, my Primaris army gets to use Terminators now. I'm getting some cool new units in the Leviathan box. That's cool. But looking at the rules that we have been given, I still don't think it makes Marines, generic Marines, good enough. But again, they're not showing us everything. Vehicles are a lot more survivable. And this has been one of my complaints for a while. Vehicles are they just crumple too easily. I can't remember the last time I saw anybody play a Land Raider, really. Nobody takes transports unless they're things like Drakari, or maybe even Tau. Because certainly not rhinos and impulsors, because they're just too expensive and they fold to a stiff breeze. Now vehicles seem a lot more survivable, which is great. But what I'm seeing is that they're not telling us enough about the weapons. And it looks like Melter, which are designed to destroy and go through vehicles, doesn't seem at this point capable of doing that. They're wounding on 4s or 5s. There might not be an armor save at the end of it, but you're not wounding easily enough. And it's kind of a switcheroo. Vehicles are getting tougher to the point that players are going to be wanting to field them, but unless your opponent brings something capable of dealing with them, they're going to get spudded. It does look a little bit like 10th is going to be vehicle and monster heavy, for a game that perhaps should be more troop heavy, more infantry heavy. And that kind of... I see certain things like they've recently previewed Abaddon. And I look at him and I go, he's much more balanced than his current version. There's no wound cap. It's nice. But then I look at one of his, I forget what they're called now, but he's got 3 abilities. He can pick one each turn. And one of them basically goes, any Heretic Astartes unit within, I think it's like 6 inches of him, can have a 4-up invulnerable save. Well, one of the problems I had in our recent store league was a Custodes army, where everything was running around with basically a 4-up invulnerable save, and I couldn't do anything about it. I don't necessarily want to see things like that in 10th. I want that sort of thing to go away. It's hard to explain, but it makes it very, very difficult to balance out armies when you can just go, it doesn't matter that you're having this high AP or whatever. If someone just goes, hey, I'm still passing half of my saves because it's a 4-up unstoppable invulnerable save. Talking of vehicles, knights are something I'm really concerned about in 10th. If vehicles are going to be this tough, knights are already ridiculously difficult to bring down. The little ones aren't so bad. They're kind of like dreadnoughts, so they're kind of okay. But the big ones are going to be they're already ridiculous. And I dread to think what 10th is going to do to them, having seen the likes of Land Raiders. And this is what I mean by it triggers sort of like knee-jerk reactions from Games Workshop, because they're putting this stuff out and people are going, oh, this is really, really cool, but I don't like this. I've seen Necron players complaining that the new reanimation protocols is awful. But to me, as a Space Marine player, it's probably the most balanced, reasonable way of handling it that they've ever had in an edition of 40k. And so for me, it might seem like I'm coming across as a bit negative to 10th. But in fact, actually, from what I'm seeing, a lot of it I like. I like 9th. I like the system. I like, even as a casual player, having the crunch, those rules. 10th does seem a lot simpler. It does seem, and I said this about 8th and 9th, and it happens every time we get a new edition now, it's becoming too much like Age of Sigmar. You can see it every time, 8th into 9th into 10th. It's never going to be the same system, but it's coming closer and closer to how that game plays, I think. If you disagree, pop a comment down below and, let me know why you disagree, or maybe you agree. So if it comes across as me being a bit towards 10th, it's only because under 8th, well, in the previous to 8th and 9th, people jumped on it only to then get the rules and go, actually, this works really, really well. They didn't give us everything. They haven't given us Melter for a start. They've just gone Melter 2. But we don't really know until we get the rule book and we get playing whether that's actually going to be any good against vehicles. Because right now it certainly doesn't, not to me anyway. And I want to know what other armies are getting. We're getting these faction focuses, but I have a horrible feeling myself that Space Marines are still going to end up being the poster boy and nothing else, which bothers me because I want my generic Space Marine, my Adeptus Astartes Codex, to be just as good as everybody else, and I just don't think it's going to happen. With 8th edition, the index books they did were fantastic. Everybody balanced out. It was nice. But as soon as we got the codices, that went out the window. This army was much more powerful than the one that went before it. This one was much more powerful than that one. And this power creep goes on and on and on. And Games Workshop have said that they're not doing that this time. If they want to put a new rule in for an army, one previous one has to go out. It's a one in, one out sort of job. And I'm hoping that that will actually stick and they're not going to do something stupid as this edition goes on to spoil that. So I have my concerns, but for the most part, I am actually really interested in 10th. I want to see where it goes. I'm not so sure on the mission system. I like the old 8th edition tactical objectives deck, where you had 6 objectives, and it might be you get told to go grab objective 2, or hold objective 6, or take objective 4, or do a psychic power, or bring down a flyer. The one they did for 9th was awful. It was basically just a deck of secondary objectives and sod all else. Was not a fan of that. And I'm not so sure, we haven't seen it all yet, but I'm not so sure on this new 10th edition card-based system until I see it in play. Oh, we're going on for nearly quarter now here, so okay. So, as I say, I might seem a little bit meh about the new edition, but actually I am really stoked for it. I'm looking forward to seeing how it changes the game. That maybe my Space Marines might get a chance to win games now on a casual level, even against other, maybe more competitive opponents, because maybe it won't play so much into the competitive nature. Maybe it will add a more random element that will allow casual players to play alongside somebody who's much more gamey, shall we say. So that's the end of that. What are your thoughts on 10th? Are you a yay? Are you a nay? Are you still sitting on the fence like me? I'd love to know what you think. I watch all these YouTube videos, these channels who are talking about it, and it is getting me stoked. Still concerned in places. Are you the same? Let me know. In the meantime, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and take care and good gaming.